So we're going to get on with the Canal roses now, and the only colours we're going to need for these to start with are titanium white, yellow ochre, and I'm using cherry red. Before we do anything though, we need to finish these leaves, and I'll be using a liner brush for these, and we're going to be putting thin comma strokes in. Typically that liner brush isn't very good. Let's try this one. I'm dampening my brush but then taking the excess water out. For the leaves we'll be using yellow ochre. Let's get some of that out. Isn't it typical? You pick up the ones that don't want to play ball. Now, traditionally, Canal roses, castles and roses, they are done in enamel paints. But when I'm teaching, particularly if I'm teaching away from my own studio, I teach in acrylics because of the odour. Some people can't cope with the smell, and it's not just the paint, it's the white spirits that you need to clean your brushes and what have you. And although you can get low odour white spirits, unfortunately it's not as good. So for those that at any point want to learn with the enamel paints, I will be bringing some of those to the studio later in the year. So I'm loading my brush. Got another one that isn't very good. This is the trouble with these brushes. Once they've gone and you lose your point, that's it. So my apologies, just bear with me. Let's see what this squirrel rigger is like. That's too thick. Just bear with me 1 second. And we will find a nice new liner. I realised before I started that these ones had given up the ghost. I'd have been prepared, so let's go for a nice brand new one. And this is a Joe Sonia midliner. Now, your new brushes generally come with something on to keep their shape, so you will definitely need to rinse those off before you go ahead. Take out the excess water and we'll try again. Load your brush. And then for all of the leaves, what we're doing is a comma stroke. Now I'm going to start in the middle so that I don't smudge anything. So lay your brush and bring a nice thin line down. Now, everybody who does Canal roses will do these differently. Some have them sticking out of the top, some only have 1 or 2. Sometimes the leaves are more pointed and an actual leaf shape, but I'm doing it the way I was taught by Terence, and these are Terence Edgar, that is, and these are circular leaves. So we're going to do that on all of the leaves, including the little ones. So I'm going to go quiet while I do this, and I will speed this process up on the video later. whichever way I started, I go the same way. So this will be more evident. If you need, sorry, I'm flitting. If you need a better flow, use a tiny little bit of water or any medium, such as Deco Art, Easy Float, or Joe Sonia, I think it's Magic Mix. You don't want to dilute your paint too much, but you do want your brush to flow. So on the little ones, start at that point, and even on this side I will then go the same in the same direction. So let me get those done and I will come back to you. Right, now all of those are done. I'm going to make a start on the red rose, and again I'm going to start in the middle and work out, so that the hope is I don't smudge. Now, lots of reds in acrylics, you may need a second coat. So if that's the case, when this is done, I'll come back and do the second coat later. I'm using cherry red, and again, we're just looking at stroke work. Now, there are lots of different ways. If you were to look online for Canal roses, you will see all sorts of variations of how these strokes are done. But again, for teaching purposes, we're just going to do what I call the jigsaw. Let me just show you something. So when I'm playing and practicing, I did come out with a slight variation on this. You can do, as you get to get familiar with the roses, you can then start to play with what sort of arrangement you'd like to do. I'm hoping that I'm not going to have the same problem with I'm using a number 3 round brush, and for these basic shapes I'm going to do the middle one in my version. So this rounded point is the top of your rose, and where you can see it's slightly rounded on the shading, that's because that's how the rose is facing. So you're starting at the top of your rose, and I'm pressure on, and as you bring your brush round, you're taking the pressure off to create your comma stroke. This one, pressure, release the pressure, and I want to cut that circle. And now I'm coming on this side again, pressure on, release the pressure as you come round. And I have got another naughty brush. And we're going to do that until the rose is complete. Sometimes you get 4 or 5 petals, other times, for whatever reason, your pressure is different and you get less petals. Now, here I'm going to do 3 small ones. Naughty brush again. And that's your first red rose. That's the process for all of the roses, just in the different colours. So remember, a red rose has a brown base. a white rose has a pink base and a yellow rose has an orange base. So I'll go ahead and get these done. There is more to them. While they're drying, we will then move on to the 2 daisies. As you can see, that red is probably going to need a second coat, but while that's doing, I'm going to show you another variation. And that is to do some small strokes around the top before you go into the bigger ones. So, try not to, don't want to lean on anything I've already done. So again, starting at the top, but coming down. Brush is really annoying me. It's typical because I've decided to record that everything I'm picking up doesn't want to play. So I'm going to have to neaten those up. A couple of small ones. One in the middle. This is incredibly frustrating. And then we start to interlock. The white again is going to need a second coat. And at the bottom, that's just another variation. So I've changed my brush. So we're on to the yellow ones. And as I say, these will need a second coat. You really want you need to make sure you've got the right brush, unlike me picking up a wrong one, because the white roses you particularly want to work well. They are the only one that doesn't have an overstroke onto these comma strokes. So here we go. First stroke, and then this one I want to cup that centre point a little, and then we're interlocking our comma strokes. And where you just have those little gaps, that's where you can just add, almost just touching the tip of your brush down to add something to the bottom. I'm really going to have to get a new set of brushes. This is very frustrating. And the final one, the yellow ochre is a nice sort of opaque colour. This shouldn't need the second coat, it's just the red and the white. I need to keep my arm out of the ones that I've previously done. Now, one of the beauties of Canal art, as much as we like everything to be perfect, back in the day when the Canal people or the travellers were decorating their things, they didn't have time. That's why it's a very simple, but I think a really lovely and effective form of art. They had to get things done quickly so that they could move on to the next thing. Now, I'm going to do something here and hope that it works. I really don't like those small strokes, so I'm going to try and take those off a bit and redo them. But that's our roses first layer. We'll come back. I will second coat everything that needs second coating, and then come back to do the overstrokes. But while we're waiting to do that, let's move on to the daisies. Now, while I've still got some yellow and red on my palette, we've shaded the roses, but what we now need to do is still add a centre, and I'm just going to use my dotting tool. Excuse me. You can use the end of the small end of a the end of a small brush, but we need to, we start with a yellow. I'm just putting, and it's the same on both the blue and the orange. It's not a dot as such, I'm just touching and giving it a little drag. And I'm using the ochre, yellow ochre for this. So each of them have this yellow. And then above that, and I will use the cherry red that I've already got on my palette, we have some red. Now, I'm not waiting for it to dry. If you're very careful, you shouldn't need to. I will wait for them to dry or use my heat tool before I put the petals in. Now, for these petals, the orange one has yellow petals. There we go, they're all done. And the blue one has white petals. And I will be using a liner brush. So let me try and dry it, because otherwise I'm going to make a mess, and that's not going to do you any favours, looking at a mess. Let me just dry these two. That's dry enough. I'm actually going to do the yellow one because I've got yellow on my palette, but they are both the same. So I'm going to use my liner brush, and I tend to come a little bit away from the circle, and really I'm just touching. Now, I like to try and get these fairly even, so sort of north, south, east and west. And then fill in. And that's exactly the same for the white daisies. Make sure you've got enough paint on your brush and just try and get them even. Now that isn't quite finished on the yellow one, because that will have, well, both daisies will have some white put around, but they're your daisies, exactly the same, yellow for the orange, white for the blue. Okay, so that's all the roses and the daisies completed, so now we're on to the next layer. And what we're going to be doing is overstroking the yellow and the red roses. Now with the yellow, that overstroke is done in white and can also be used, white can also be used on the red ones. Sometimes I use the yellow ochre. So with a liner brush, I'm not worrying about this feathering either. I mean, Canal art is very forgiving. Obviously, you want to try and have all your comma strokes perfect, but it is very forgiving. So your overstrokes with a liner brush is just the same thing in the middle of that stroke on all of your comma strokes. I'm not going to bore you by doing all of them. I'll just do the yellow one. I'm going to do my red ones with yellow. You can choose whether you use the yellow ochre or whether you'd like to just use the white on all of them. And while I've got the yellow ochre in, I would also then just use my liner brush. Oh, dropped water. That's it. I would just use my liner brush to do the centre, and that would just be very fine. Three or five little stamen, I suppose they'd be. But regards the overstroking, exactly the same with the red. I'm using yellow ochre. Again, there's a little bit of feathering there on that one. I didn't have enough paint. I'm not worried too much about it. Let's add a little bit of water. Let's go over that one again. I say I'm not worried about it, but I do like it to be accurate if I can. And again, the little stamen. You do not overstroke your white roses. But you do put the stamen in, and it depends how the mood takes me as to whether I use yellow or white in these, but I've got yellow on my palette and on my brush, so So do all of that to all of your roses. Actually, while I've got the yellow in, I may as well just put the stamen in. And then on your daisies, we just need to add some dots. Just going to do this because it seems silly to waste paint. So for your daisies, I'm using the dotting tool, but the very small end, you could use a toothpick, anything that you've got, and we just go around the circle with some dots to finish it off. And that's the same on the orange one, or the yellow one, as well as the blue one. So again, you would do that on all of your daisies. And then we've got fillers. Now the fillers would be done, you can choose your colour really, but that's the beauty of decorative painting, but traditionally it would be the green. So lighthouser green, get a little bit of that on. I'm sorry if you can hear some whining, it's my dog. He doesn't want to sit in here with me, but it's raining. And again, this is something that is your choice. Your fillers can actually go anywhere. But let me see. So normally they would be a leaf shape. Now bear with me. I'm actually just going to do comma strokes, but let me just show you. I'd like to put it on the back of something. Just bear with me. This one is ready for a class, so let me just go into this corner. And how you would do the traditionally, you would come out in a thin line and then just thin line and pressure, thin line and pressure. That is how you would do them. So let's put a couple in like that, in between the daisies. So thin line, pressure, thin line, pressure. I like odd numbers. Same here. Again, they might not all be exact, but that's fine. And then here in between I would do the same. Now I want to show you something different. No, we'll do the same because of what we're going to do around the edge. So thin line, pressure, and we'll do that all the way round. And then the final thing we will do is edge. Now I gave myself a little dotted line around here just so that I got the pattern more in the middle, and I know that it's slightly off centre, which is very frustrating. Again, you could use any of the colours that are in the design: yellow, white, green. I I think there's a lot of green. I'm probably going to go for white, and all I will do, I will only do a couple, and then I'll finish this off afterwards. Again, I would use the liner brush, and it would just be comma strokes. Now, you could decide which way you want those comma strokes. So do you want them to go in or out? I'm going to bring them up as if they're cupping. So pick a place to start. And just follow it round. And that will edge and finish off your plate. So I'm going to get on and finish that now so that I can take a photograph for you to put at the end. And I'll see you in class, ladies.